The night was dark and heavy with smoke. The battlefield stretched far across the broken land, filled with the smell of blood and burned metal. A cold wind whispered through the ruins, carrying the cries of the dying. Human soldier Daniel walked, carefully, his boots crunching over shattered glass and twisted steel. He thought he was the last one alive here. But then, he heard it, a sound too soft for war. A weak breath, a small whimper, like someone was trying not to cry. Daniel froze, his rifle tight in his hands. He scanned the shadows between the fallen walls. His heartbeat grew louder in his ears. There just ahead something moved. Daniel lifted his gun, finger brushing the trigger. But when his eyes focused, he didn't see an enemy soldier. He saw her, an alien woman, lying on the ground. Her body was half buried in dust, her skin marked with strange glowing scars. One of her legs was twisted, broken. Her arms trembled as she tried to push herself up, but she fell back down, weak and helpless. Her eyes, large, luminous, filled with pain, met his. Daniel's breath caught. He had fought her kind before. He had been told they were monsters, killers without mercy. But this one looked broken, fragile, more like a dying bird than a warrior. Her lips parted, and she whispered something in her language, the sound soft and trembling. He told himself to walk away. He had orders. He had no reason to help her. If anyone found out, they would call him a traitor. But something about her eyes held him still. Daniel stepped closer, gun still aimed. "Don't move," he warned. His voice was firm, but his heart was racing. The alien woman didn't move. She only lifted her hand slowly, painfully, and reached toward him, not in attack, not in anger, but as if begging for someone to hold her. His chest tightened. Daniel shook his head, trying to clear it. "No," he muttered to himself. "She's the enemy. She's not your problem. He should leave her here. She wouldn't survive the night anyway." But when he turned, he heard her voice again, soft, weak, like a plea. He looked back. Her body shivered in the cold wind. Her torn clothes barely covered her. Dust clung to her face, streaked with tears, and those eyes, they begged him not to leave. Daniel cursed under his breath. He knelt beside her, lowering his weapon but keeping it close. "Why are you still alive?" he whispered. She tried to answer, but her voice broke. He couldn't understand the words, but the tone was clear. She was alone. She was afraid. Her body shook harder. He noticed her wounds, deep cuts across her arms, bruises on her neck, burns on her chest. Whoever had left her here hadn't just tried to kill her. They had broken her, piece by piece. Daniel felt something inside him shift. He pulled off his cloak and covered her trembling body. She flinched at first, but then her breathing slowed, her eyes closing as if the warmth gave her a small comfort. He hated himself for what he was doing, but he couldn't stop. Daniel lifted her carefully, her light weight surprising him. She gasped in pain, clutching at his chest. Her head rested against him, and he felt her heartbeat, weak, fragile, but still fighting. He carried her toward the ruins of his outpost. Every shadow made him tense. If anyone saw him with her, he would be executed. But somehow, he kept going, step after step, carrying the broken alien woman who should have been his enemy. Inside the outpost, he laid her down gently. She opened her eyes, looking at him with something close to trust. Her lips moved, and though he couldn't understand her words, he felt what she was trying to say. "Don't leave me." Daniel sat back, staring at her. He had never felt this kind of conflict before. His duty screamed at him to end her life. His heart whispered to save her. The silence between them grew heavy. The air was thick with questions he wasn't ready to answer. Outside, a sound echoed, distant footsteps, growing closer. Daniel's head snapped toward the door, his hand gripping his rifle again. Someone was coming. The alien woman's eyes widened in fear. She reached for his arm, holding it tightly with her trembling hand. Her skin was warm against his. Daniel's pulse raced. He knew the truth in that moment. He wasn't just hiding her. He was choosing her. And now, someone was about to find out. The door creaked. Daniel raised his weapon, his body tense. He glanced at her one last time, her eyes locked on his. In that fragile silence, He realized his life had just changed forever. The footsteps stopped right outside. Then, a shadow moved across the doorway, and the door began to open. Daniel pushed the door shut, his heart pounding. Whoever had been outside passed by without entering, but the sound of boots fading into the night kept his nerves sharp. He stayed still, rifle ready, listening. The alien woman's shallow breaths echoed behind him. When silence returned, Daniel exhaled. He turned toward her. She lay on the makeshift bed of cloth he had spread, her broken leg twisted awkwardly, her chest rising and falling in weak tremors. For a moment, he just stared. He still didn't know why he hadn't left her. Any soldier would have called him insane, but something inside him refused to let her die alone in the dirt. The outpost wasn't much of a shelter, just crumbling walls, a rusted roof, and shadows that smelled of ash, but it was better than open ground. Daniel lit a small lantern, enough to see her injuries clearly. When the light touched her face, she flinched, covering her eyes with her arm. "It's okay," he said softly. His voice surprised even him. He hadn't spoken gently to anyone in years. Her hand lowered slowly, her eyes adjusting to the glow, and in that fragile moment, Daniel noticed details he hadn't before. Her skin was pale silver, marked with glowing blue veins that pulsed faintly like stars under her flesh. Her hair, tangled and dirty, shimmered faintly when the lantern light caught it. She was alien, she was strange, and yet there was a beauty in her broken form that disturbed him. Daniel forced himself to focus. He tore strips from his spare uniform and crouched beside her. "I need to wrap your wounds," he said. He knew she couldn't understand his words, but his tone carried the message. When he reached for her arm, she flinched again, eyes wide. She whispered something quick and sharp in her own tongue. "I'm not going to hurt you," Daniel murmured. He touched her wrist carefully, slowly, giving her time. She stared at him, trembling, then let her hand relax. He cleaned her cuts with water from his canteen, each touch making her body twitch. He tried not to notice the softness of her skin, the warmth under his fingers. He tried not to notice the scars across her chest where her clothes were torn, revealing too much, yet telling a story of suffering. She watched him closely, her lips parting as if she wanted to speak. Then, in a trembling whisper, one word came, outbroken, but recognizable. "Why?" Daniel froze. Did she just speak his language, or had it only sounded like a word he knew? He stared at her, but she closed her eyes, exhausted. A cold wind rattled the broken windows, and Daniel's hand went to his rifle. The war wasn't far from here. If anyone discovered her, if anyone discovered him sheltering her, both of them would die. He finished bandaging her and sat back against the wall. His eyes stayed on the door, but his thoughts kept circling back to her. Why did she look at him like that? Why did he feel like he had already crossed a line he could never return? The night stretched long. Every sound outside, the cry of scavenger beasts, the distant rumble of engines, the sharp crack of gunfire kept Daniel awake. Hours later, when the lantern burned low, he heard movement, not outside, inside. The alien woman had shifted, pushing herself up on her elbows. Her hair fell across her face, her torn clothes slipping lower over her shoulder. Her eyes, glowing faintly in the dark, fixed on him. Daniel rose quickly. "Stay down. You'll make your wounds worse." But she didn't listen. With effort, she dragged herself closer to him, her hand trembling as it reached for his arm. He caught her gently before she collapsed. She was too weak to move, her body falling against his chest. Her face was close now, too close. Her breath touched his skin, her glowing eyes searched his, and she whispered something, soft words he couldn't understand, but the meaning was clear. She didn't want to be alone. Daniel swallowed hard. He knew this was dangerous. He knew this was wrong. And yet, his arms tightened around her. Outside, in the distance, a sudden flare of light split the sky. Explosions echoed across the ruined land. Someone was coming closer. Daniel lifted her back to the bed, his mind racing. He had a choice to make: abandon her now and escape, or keep protecting her and risk everything. Her weak hand caught his wrist before he could step away. Her lips trembled as she whispered one word again. "Stay." Daniel froze, And then outside the shelter, footsteps. Slow, heavy, getting closer. The lantern flickered, and the shadow of a soldier fell across the doorway. The soldier's shadow passed slowly across the doorway. Daniel pressed his back against the wall, his rifle raised, his heart pounding. One wrong sound, and both of them were finished. The alien woman lay silent, her glowing eyes fixed on the entrance, her hands still gripping Daniel's wrist as if to keep him from leaving. The footsteps paused, a long moment of silence. Then, at last, the shadow moved away. Boots crunched over broken stone, fading into the night. Daniel waited, breath held, until there was nothing but the sound of wind through the ruined shelter. Only then did he lower his rifle. His muscles ached from the tension. He turned to her. She was trembling again, her grip on his wrist weakening, but she hadn't let go. "You almost got us killed," he whispered, though his voice was softer than his words. She blinked slowly, her lips parting as if she wanted to answer, but only a weak sound came out. Fragile and broken. Daniel gently freed his hand, but as he pulled away, she reached again, touching his fingers this time. Her hand was small, warm, shaking with exhaustion. For a long moment, he froze. He wasn't used to being touched. Not like this. Not with need. He told himself to pull back, to break the connection. But instead, his hand closed around hers. The alien woman's eyes widened, her breath quickening. Something flickered across her face, fear, hope, maybe both. She whispered another word he didn't know, but the tone sounded like relief. Daniel swallowed. Hard. He didn't understand what was happening inside him. He had been trained to see her kind as enemies, but holding her hand now, feeling her pulse racing under fragile skin, she didn't feel like an enemy. She felt alive. She felt human. Her wounds needed more care. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to focus. He reached for the bandage on her leg. She winced when he touched her, gasping softly. "Easy," he muttered. "I'm not here to hurt you." But his voice shook, because every time he touched her skin, a strange heat stirred inside him. It wasn't desire, not fully. It was something heavier, something he didn't want to name. Her torn clothes shifted as he worked, revealing more scars across her ribs, her stomach, her collarbone. Each mark looked like pain carved into flesh. Daniel's chest tightened. Whoever had done this hadn't just tried to kill her. They had wanted to break her spirit. He looked at her face. Her eyes were closed now, but her hands still clung weakly to his, as though letting go would mean death. Daniel's breath grew uneven. He placed the final bandage, then carefully adjusted the cloak he had wrapped around her. His fingers brushed the curve of her shoulder, and she shivered, not from fear, but something else. Her eyes opened slowly, glowing, watching him, and then softly, carefully she reached up and touched his cheek. Daniel froze. Her fingers were light as feathers, trembling as they traced the edge of his jaw. She looked at him like he was something impossible, something she had never seen before. A protector, a stranger who had chosen her. Daniel's throat went dry. He wanted to pull back, to break this dangerous closeness, but he couldn't. Their silence grew heavy, thick with words neither could speak. The touch burned into him deeper than he expected. Then, suddenly, a sharp sound broke the moment. Voices, outside. Not one, many. Daniel's body tensed instantly. He dropped her hand, grabbed his rifle, and moved to the shadows by the door. The alien woman's eyes widened with fear again. She tried to sit up, whispering his name not in his language, but in hers, like a prayer. Outside, soldiers were searching the ruins. Their voices carried closer, louder, until Daniel could make out every word. They must be hiding here. Search every building. Daniel's pulse raced. They were coming. He glanced back at her. She lay trembling, her hand reaching toward him. Again, her touch had just started to feel like trust. And now, if they were caught, it would mean death for them both. The footsteps drew nearer, boots crunching, weapons clattering. Daniel raised his rifle, sweat running down his temple. The voices stopped right outside the door. A soldier's hand touched the handle, and the door began to creak open. The door creaked open. Lantern light spilled across the floor, and Daniel froze in the shadows, rifle raised. 3 enemy soldiers stepped inside. Their armor clanked softly, their eyes scanning the room. One of them swung his weapon toward the corners. Daniel's chest tightened. If they turned just a little, they would see him. On the bed, the alien woman lay motionless. Her glowing skin betrayed her presence in the darkness, like a faint blue beacon. Daniel's heart dropped. If they looked, they would notice her. He acted before they could. A single shot cracked through the silence. The first soldier fell instantly. Daniel spun, firing again, dropping the second. The third lunged forward, blade drawn, but Daniel caught him with the rifle's butt, sending him crashing against the wall. The noise was deafening inside the broken shelter. The alien woman cried out, covering her ears. Daniel grabbed her arm. "We need to move." She was weak, but the fear in her eyes gave her strength. He pulled her to her feet, throwing her arm over his shoulder to carry her weight. Her broken leg dragged against the ground, every step making her gasp in pain. Outside, more voices rose, shouts, the sound of running boots. The enemy had heard the gunfire. Daniel dragged her into the night. The ruins stretched around them, lit by burning wreckage. Shadows flickered in every direction. "Stay quiet," he whispered. Though he knew she couldn't understand, they slipped between collapsed walls and broken towers, moving as fast as her body allowed. Behind them, soldiers spread out, their flashlights sweeping across the rubble. The alien woman clung to him, her head pressed against his shoulder, her breath hot and quick. He could feel her trembling, but she didn't let go. Every second, the voices grew closer. Daniel ducked into a collapsed tunnel, carrying her deeper into the dark. He set her down against the wall, crouching low as light beams passed just outside. She tried to speak, her words soft and broken. He couldn't understand, but he caught one thing: fear. The way her voice cracked, the way her hand searched blindly for his. He held her hand, squeezing it once, silently promising she wasn't alone. The footsteps stopped, then silence. Daniel frowned. Soldiers never went quiet unless they were planning something. His eyes darted across the tunnel entrance. Suddenly, light burst through the cracks above. "Grenades, down!" Daniel shouted. The explosions shook the tunnel. Dust rained from above. The alien woman screamed. Clutching his arm, Daniel shielded her with his body as fire and smoke filled the air. When the blast faded, he pulled her up again. The tunnel was collapsing behind them. Stones fell, sealing their path. There was only one way forward into the wilderness beyond the ruins. Daniel pushed forward, half carrying, half dragging her through the broken passage. They stumbled into open ground, the night air burning with smoke. The enemy soldiers were already spreading across the hills, lights flashing like hungry eyes. "Run!" Daniel muttered, though he knew she couldn't. Her broken body barely held together, but somehow she pushed forward with him, each step a battle of its own. Bullets tore through the air behind them. Daniel pulled her close, diving into a ditch. Dirt sprayed over them as shots struck the ground. The alien woman buried her face against his chest, whispering his name again or something close to it. Her voice was desperate, like a plea not to let go. Daniel's jaw tightened. He had no choice anymore. He had chosen her. He fired back, forcing the enemy to scatter. Then he dragged her toward the forest that loomed ahead. Tall, twisted trees reached for the sky, offering shadows deep enough to hide them. But the chase wasn't over. Behind them, dogs barked, engines roared to life. The enemy wasn't letting go. Daniel carried her into the trees, heart hammering, lungs burning. The forest swallowed them, branches snapping under their weight. But as the darkness closed around them, a chilling thought struck him. He didn't know what lived in this forest. The alien woman clutched him tighter, her glowing eyes wide with fresh fear. Somewhere deep inside the woods, something growled, and it wasn't human. The forest was alive with whispers. Branches creaked overhead, shadows twisted on the ground, and every step Daniel took echoed louder than he wanted. He kept one arm tight around the alien woman, guiding her deeper between the trees. Behind them, the enemy's voices faded, but the growl he had heard earlier still haunted the silence. Something else was out here. Something watching. Daniel finally stopped near a hollow under a fallen tree. "Here," he muttered. Lowering her down, she winced as her broken leg bent. a soft cry escaping her lips. He crouched close, scanning the dark forest. His rifle stayed ready, but his eyes kept returning to her. She was shivering uncontrollably, her body weak from pain and exhaustion. The cloak he had wrapped around her had torn in the escape. Now it barely clung to her shoulders, slipping lower with each tremor. Daniel tried not to look, but he couldn't ignore what he saw. Her body was marked with scars, long, deep, jagged scars across her ribs and stomach, burns that had eaten through her pale skin, bruises staining her arms. Whoever had tortured her hadn't only wanted to hurt her, they had wanted to erase her. And yet, beneath the scars, she was beautiful. Daniel swallowed hard. He shouldn't think this way. But her brokenness only pulled him closer, her fragility. Her fight to keep breathing, it shook something inside him. He thought was long dead. The alien woman's eyes opened. Slowly, she saw him watching her. For a moment, she pulled the torn cloak tighter against her chest. But then, her hands trembled, and the cloth slipped away. Her naked form was revealed beneath the lantern's faint glow. Not in pride, not in seduction, but in defeat. She whispered something soft, her voice raw. Though Daniel couldn't understand the words, the meaning was clear. This is who I am now. Broken, shamed, nothing left. Daniel's throat tightened. He had seen soldiers die with honor, warriors fall with pride. But this silent surrender was worse than death. He reached out without thinking. His fingers brushed her shoulder, then moved down gently, carefully covering her with the cloak again. Her eyes widened at his touch. She had expected disgust, rejection, maybe even violence. Instead, he gave her warmth. "Don't hide because of them," he said softly. His words carried no anger, only a strange tenderness. "Your scars don't make you less." She blinked, her glowing eyes filling with something wet tears. For a long time, she just stared at him, as if trying to believe what she heard. Her hand rose slowly, trembling, and touched his chest. Her palm rested over his heartbeat. She whispered again, this time more clearly. The words sounded almost like his own tongue. "Human." Daniel's breath caught. For the first time, he realized she wasn't just asking for help. She was choosing him. But before he could answer, the growl returned, louder, closer. Daniel spun toward the forest. Two glowing eyes peered at them from the shadows. Then another, and another. Creatures emerged from the dark wolf-like beasts, their jaws dripping, their bodies larger than men. Their snarls shook the air. The alien woman clutched him, her naked body trembling under the cloak. Daniel raised his rifle, his finger steady on the trigger. "Stay behind me," he whispered. Though she was already pressed against his back, the first beast stepped forward, its claws tearing into the dirt. The pack surrounded them, growling, circling, waiting to strike. Daniel's heart raced. He had saved her from soldiers, carried her through fire and ruin. But now, in the heart of the wild, surrounded by predators hungry for blood, he wasn't sure if he could save her again. The biggest beast lunged, its jaws opening wide, and Daniel fired. The shot echoed through the trees. But as the beast fell, three more leapt from the dark. Asterisk gunfire cracked through the forest. Daniel dropped one beast, then another. But the pack kept coming. Their glowing eyes and snapping jaws filled the night with terror. The alien woman clung to him, her fingers tight on his arm, her weak voice whispering his name again, broken, trembling, but desperate. Daniel pulled her close with one arm, firing. With the other, every shot echoed through the trees, but his magazine was running low. He knew he couldn't hold them off forever. When the last bullet fired, the forest fell into a thick silence. Only the beasts remained, circling, their low growls shaking the ground. Daniel raised his empty rifle, his jaw tight. The bigger beast lunged. Daniel swung the rifle like a club, smashing it across the creature's skull. It yelped, staggered back. The second beast charged at the alien woman. She screamed. Daniel moved without thinking. He threw himself between her and the beast, his knife flashing in the dark. The blade sank into flesh, hot blood spraying across his hands. The beast collapsed at his feet. The other one hesitated, growled once more, then vanished into the shadows. The pack retreating at last. Daniel stood panting, blood dripping from his hands. His body shook from exhaustion, but he turned immediately to her. She was on the ground, trembling, her cloak fallen aside again. The lantern's glow revealed her bare skin, her scars, her weakness. She looked at him with wide eyes, not of fear, but of shock. He knelt beside her. "You're safe now," he whispered, though his voice was rough. Broken, she touched his hand, her glowing eyes searching his face. Slowly, she raised his bloody palm and pressed it against her chest, over her heart. Daniel froze. Her skin was warm, her heartbeat fast under his hand. She wasn't just thanking him. She was giving herself to him, in trust, in surrender. His throat tightened. Every part of him screamed this was forbidden. She was the enemy. She wasn't even human, and yet he couldn't pull away. Her trembling fingers slid up, brushing against his cheek. For the first time, her lips curved not into a smile, but into something fragile, like hope struggling to live again. Daniel leaned closer without meaning to. Her breath touched his skin, warm, soft. Their faces were inches apart, the silence thick between them. But then, a sharp crack split the night, not from beasts, from weapons, gunfire. Daniel's head snapped up. Bright flashes lit the distance. Soldiers were moving through the forest. Dozens of them. The alien woman gasped, clutching his chest. She whispered quickly in her own tongue, panic in every sound. Daniel gritted his teeth. He had just fought death itself to keep her alive, and now the real hunters were back. He pulled her cloak around her body, lifting her into his arms once more. Her glowing eyes locked onto his, full of terror and trust at the same time. "We're not done yet," Daniel muttered. The soldiers' voices grew louder. Flashlights cut through the darkness, searching. Daniel carried her deeper into the forest. Every step a race against time. His arms burned with her weight, but he didn't stop, couldn't stop. Behind him, the gunfire faded into shouts. The enemy was spreading wide. They were hunting. Ahead, the trees grew denser, the forest swallowing them whole. But Daniel knew the truth. He could only run so far. Soon, he would have to fight again. The forest swallowed them in darkness. Daniel's lungs burned. His arms ached from carrying her. But he didn't stop. Behind them, soldiers' voices grew louder, lights flashing between the trees. The hunt was closing in. The alien woman clung to him, whispering weakly, her head against his chest. Each breath from her lips was fragile, like she could slip away at any moment. He stumbled into a clearing at last. The moonlight poured down, revealing an old ruined stone walls broken, a shattered tower leaning against the stars. "This is it," Daniel muttered, setting her down gently against the cold stone. His rifle was nearly empty, his knife bloodied, his body worn. He had nothing left but himself. The alien woman's glowing eyes searched his face. She lifted a trembling hand to his cheek. "Human," she whispered, her voice breaking. It wasn't just his name anymore. It was a plea, a confession, a claim. Daniel's chest tightened. He had sworn to fight for his people, sworn to kill her kind without mercy. But now she was his reason to fight at all. Shouts echoed from the trees. Soldiers entered the clearing, weapons raised. Their lights blinded him. Their voices barked orders. "Step away from the alien." One shouted, "Put your hands up or die." Another warned. Daniel stood tall, placing himself between her and them. His rifle shook in his grip. He knew he couldn't win, not against so many. But when he looked back at her, broken, scarred, naked under the torn cloak, yet still alive, still holding on, he realized the choice was already made. He wasn't leaving her. Not now, not ever. Daniel raised his rifle. "You'll take me first," he growled. The soldiers hesitated. Confusion rippled through their ranks. Why was a human protecting her? The alien woman tried to rise, but her broken leg gave out. She fell forward, clutching his arm. Her voice, weak but certain, spoke a single word again. "Stay." Daniel's heart thundered. He squeezed her hand once, then stepped forward, shielding her completely. His eyes locked on the soldiers. The clearing fell into silence. Then chaos. Gunfire erupted. Daniel fired back, shouting with fury. Bullets ripped through stone, sparks flying in the night. The alien woman screamed his name, her glowing hands reaching for him as he fought. But there were too many. A shot struck his shoulder. He staggered, blood soaking his uniform. Still he stood, refusing to fall. Another shot grazed his side. He roared, pushing forward, determined to drag her out of this hell. And then suddenly the forest lit up. A strange blue light poured from her body, bright as fire, blinding the soldiers. They screamed, dropping their weapons, clutching their eyes. Daniel turned, stunned. The alien woman was glowing, her scars blazing, her body alive with a power he had never seen. She looked at him through tears, her lips trembling, and then she whispered words he finally understood. "I choose you." The ground shook. The light exploded outward, throwing the soldiers back into the trees. The forest roared with the force, silence falling after the storm. When it ended, Daniel collapsed to his knees, his breath ragged. He turned to her. She was trembling, her glow fading, her strength nearly gone. He caught her before she fell, holding her against his chest. Her lips brushed his ear, her voice faint but certain. "Now, you're mine." Daniel closed his eyes, his arms tightening around her, even as the night swallowed them both. The war, the chase, the pain, none of it mattered. Now, because in that broken, forbidden bond, he had already made his final choice.